Welcome to the Armchair Constituents, the weekly podcast about news topics. While we're not experts or academics, we do like to speak our voice freely. And keep in mind that as the facts change, so can our opinions.
We are now about to present the main attraction of our world-famous show.
All right. Welcome to the Armchair Constituents. This is episode 11, recorded on June 18th. I'm Jeff Kramer. You can speak now.
Hi, everyone. It's really exciting. I get to do most of the updates this week, so I'm rather enthusiastic about
Listen,
that.
Calm down. There's only 3. All right.
There's a couple sub-points.
All right. Well, go for it. First, we have some updates on Russia. So let's hear about it.
Yeah. So a couple of interesting just updates this week. A couple things in Russia. One, Alexei Navalny was arrested. He's the opposition leader in Russia. He'd been prevented from running for president before. And I mean, they're free and open elections. Probably would have shot him straight to the top anyway. So I understand their reasoning. But there was a protest that was set to occur on Russia Day, which was June 12th. And Navalny had an area in which he was going to protest, decided to shift it at the last minute. Anyway, he was arrested for an unregistered protest, and he was sentenced to 30 days of administrative arrest. Sort of in conjunction with this, also within Russia, is the issue of the National Guard. So I think it was like in our first episode, we had talked about Putin establishing a National Guard. And earlier this week, he signed legislation moving soldiers from his internal forces to the National Guard, which are more loyal to him. So the internal forces are, I guess, kind of like the FBI or just like one giant national SWAT team. And the internal forces aren't really Putin loyalists at all. They're a little more liberal, and they aren't really big fans of the whole you can't protest thing. So their stance had always been, if so long as you don't break any laws while you're protesting, we don't care. And Putin, in an effort to sort of shore up his end of the government, switched a bunch of soldiers from internal forces to National Guard. And the last thing with regards to Russia was finally revealed this week what information the president leaked to the Russian ambassadors, and that was that Israel had successfully hacked ISIS computers, and this all kind of relates back to the whole banning of laptops on international flights out of certain countries, and how that was a whole meshuggah for a little while. It was very controversial. Apparently, Israel had found out that ISIS was in the midst of developing a laptop bomb that could not be detected through, I guess, normal airport security. So that's interesting to say the very least. I know one of the big concerns circulating around all of this was that the information that was leaked could only come potentially from a handful of sources, so it might blow some Israeli cover somewhere within ISIS. So that's Russia. The second thing is Turkey. I think it was 14 arrest warrants were issued for members of Erdogan's security detail after they beat the crap out of a bunch of protesters in D.C. 3 of those individuals have already been arrested. In reference to the arrest warrants, Erdogan said, or it may have been Çavuşoğlu, his defense minister, said they didn't do anything to the protesters. In addition to that, yesterday they detained 2 of our brothers who intervened. They issued arrest warrants for 12 of my security officials. What kind of law is this? What kind of legal system is this? So Erdogan continues to defend the absolutely insane actions of his security detail, and we decided that we're going to try to arrest him, which is exciting. Last update, Qatar. As we all know, the United States helped isolate Qatar from the rest of the Gulf states, as we talked about last week. And to celebrate that, this effort to really defund terrorism, because Qatar is noted for its heavy terrorist funding, the United States decided to enact a $12 billion arms deal with them that includes, I believe, some F-35 jets, very fast, very nice jets. I think those are the same ones we sold to the Saudis too. So just a fun little update that nothing quite says let's isolate Qatar regionally and get them to stop financing international terrorism, like selling them $10 billion worth of material. So those are our updates for the week. 3 quick hits.
The fastest we've ever gotten through an update.
I believe in efficiency.
All right, well, let's see if we can keep that efficiency. First topic of the week, we have testimony by Attorney General Jeff Sessions. This is another one I'm gonna let you handle, but he basically, the top points was he met twice with the Russian ambassador, and I believe there's something here about a potential third time.
Yeah.
But it uncovered quite a few issues of ineptitude with our Attorney General.
Yeah, basically what I took away from everything was that Jeff Sessions has absolutely no clue what's going on and didn't have much of a clue to begin with, and he was just a conduit through which a lot of ambassadors tried to get connections with the Trump administration. One Republican staffer who spoke on the condition of anonymity, which is reasonable, said that Jeff Sessions doesn't really meet with anyone, and in his entire time on, I believe it was the Security Council, didn't really meet with anyone at all, and said he is, quote, clueless as to what's going on. When the Republican staffer was asked, so did Senator Sessions meet with a lot of people when he was on this council, he actually said, is that a serious question? So that's interesting. So
he also claimed that he met with these ambassadors, or the ambassador Kislyak is the only one he's met with. Correct?
No, he actually met with a bunch of ambassadors in his Senate office. So the interesting thing is there's a federal law that says you can't conduct any type of campaign activity in your Senate office, which Sessions blatantly violated. He met with ambassadors in his Senate office, and he only discussed Trump's policies and got the ambassadors' feedback.
That's what I was getting to. He claimed he didn't meet as a Trump surrogate, but as a senator on the Armed Services Committee. Correct?
Yeah, it's Armed Services Committee.
Yeah. So that's another thing. Like there's more, but that was he's saying one thing and they're claiming another.
Basically everyone that he met. I think an article in the Atlantic had a few different ambassadors that he had met with, and everyone said we only met with him because he was a Trump surrogate, and that they had very, very similar interactions with the Clinton campaign. So they were just meeting for the purposes of discussing Trump's policies, seeing what that type of relationship would be like. So, basically the entire Sessions testimony was Jeff Sessions not remembering anything that he ever did, and us essentially learning that he was clueless to begin with. He seems to continue to be clueless, and he didn't. I won't say he damned Donald Trump any more than he already was, but he certainly didn't help. It's just, for me, it's just another thing that looks super fishy, and Jeff Sessions just kind of looks like an idiot.
Well, this is the same man that said marijuana was only slightly better than heroin, and wants to institute mandatory minimums again. So. Oh
yeah, crank up the drug war and do mandatory minimums again. All those good policies that we know statistically work.
Like I said, this is mostly you did the background into this. I just kind of looked at it, but it seemed like a way more interesting testimony than Comey's. But also there was something I read, which maybe you can touch on more, is some of the responses to his questions where he couldn't speak on conversations with the president, which was
not true.
Yeah, and some of these members of the committee basically told him to his face that there was no executive privilege and he was under oath, and he still refused. He was citing
executive privilege or something.
Well, he was claiming that these were. I'm trying to remember what he said. Basically, that these were rules, long-standing rules, from the DOJ, and in which the committee asked, "Are these rules written down?" And his response was, "I believe so." So
this is why I'm so scared to say anything full force. You can't, if somebody does something stupid in the office, you can't do that. And actually you can. I'm crap. I should just not open my mouth about anything.
Well, yeah, that was mostly what I looked into. Was just, a lot of the the articles I looked into were just pointing out that whole little transaction where he tried to claim executive
I mean,
privilege.
it obviously wasn't nearly as high profile as Comey's, but I would say honestly, we basically got the exact amount of information out of it. I mean, I think people were a lot harder on Sessions than they were on Comey's, and I can't recall or I can't answer or stuff like that. And I mean, I think naturally, like I just as a kind of a sidebar, it does bug me a little bit how much the media at large has jumped all over Jim Comey as this Boy Scout. I literally saw a political cartoon of Jim Comey wearing a Boy Scout uniform being shouted at by Donald Trump, and you're like, and just, Jim Comey, like, in this circumstance, Jim Comey does seem like a good guy. He seems like the white-hatted cowboy in the Western. But at the same time, this is also the man who tried to backdoor into iPhones. Like, as the head of the FBI, this is something that they're pushing for. I mean, he doesn't have clean hands either.
We can't focus on matters with an historical mindset. We have to look at the here and now. Okay? Stop.
All right.
Stop trying to be reasonable.
All right. Fair point. Fair point.
Speaking of political narratives, we're going to talk about the shooting in Alexandria this week, where a man with an assault rifle. I'm not going to say the guy's name because I don't see the point in it, but he went to the Republican congressional baseball practice in Alexandria and opened fire on the field. There's a lot of talk about him being a Sanders supporter, and then of course Virginia gun laws get brought into it. How we're apparently the most lax state on gun laws,
which is absolute bullshit.
Yeah,
it's like David Frum. I guess we can just kind of tackle this piecemeal. I think let's look at the sort of the gun laws itself and some of the political fallout from that, but I guess also the kind of the politicization of the whole thing. And I have not read a lot of news since probably Thursday, so maybe a touch out of the loop on the politicization. I've talked about it with a few people, but I guess kind of want to bifurcate it like that. So I guess starting with Virginia gun laws, like David Frum, and I love the Atlantic. I think they do some great journalism, but David Frum, their editor, was tweeting out some of the most asinine bullshit, saying that Virginia doesn't require any type of background checks. Well, yes, we do. You could buy guns to get federally licensed firearm dealers. You have to have a background check. The only place you can't is at a gun show. Right? He's like, you could open carry a long gun in public. Well, yes, because Virginia is an open carry state. The point of open carrying is that everyone knows it's there. That's why you have a permit to concealed carry. It's also highly impractical to open carry a long gun, which can be a rifle or a shotgun. Then it's absurd. And one of the other interesting points that I didn't know about Virginia gun laws, you can go to the Virginia State Police's website and find, is that different municipalities or cities or towns, what have you, have instituted magazine size bans. So in Alexandria, technically, the firearm that man was using was illegal. Virginia said the gun that he was using was illegal. And it drives me nuts reading the two competing narratives that are constructed. That's either less guns lead to less violence or more guns lead to less violence. I mean, in Virginia, in the past decade, our gun sales have gone up 101%, and our gun violence has dropped 28%. So everybody that reads a National Review is like, oh man, look at that. And some of the states that have some of the strictest gun laws in the nation, Pennsylvania, Illinois, Maryland, New York, New Jersey, California, have some of the worst gun violence in the United States, but so do states with lax gun laws. I feel like it's just not so simple as, more guns, less crime, more guns, more crime. It infuriates me when they try to break it down so simply in one way or the other.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's no way to tell. There's more factors than just guns are available, so there's going to be gun violence. There's socioeconomic factors. There's a lot of other things that lead to this violence, particularly in California and Illinois and New York and Maryland.
Yeah. Actually, so New Orleans has the most gun violence per capita, but they're also, I think, like one of the few places where you can open carry alcohol. And I think the open carry of alcohol might be a little more related to the violence than just the gun itself, but that's just me. It's just a thought.
Well, Don't they also have laws similar to most other states that you're not allowed to carry while you're under the influence?
I don't know. There's some places that say you can't carry in a bar at all. There's some that are like you can carry in a bar, but you have to like drop it at the coat check. I didn't honestly dig too much into that. That was just something I just could pull out of the air.
Well, and then okay, so and then the next political point is the fact that this man was he worked on the Sanders campaign, which somehow Sanders had to come out and basically with a comment on condemning acts like this, because apparently if somebody works for you and then decides to kill people, that's your responsibility.
Yeah.
I found that the most ridiculous. Like, well, Sanders came out and condemned this, so it's well, of course he did. Why would he condone this? It's just it just seemed ridiculous.
What bugs me, I think, or what bugs me, what I think will be interesting to see is if people start playing the, well, is this indicative of game? You know, when we had the Oregon stabbing a couple of weeks back, I mean, even you and I did it. We talked about how I use the phrase emblematic of a lot, how it could be emblematic of a particular climate. And I think a lot of reporting was done about how this was just so indicative of, you know, how dangerous the white nationalism is and how dangerous populism is. And I haven't seen any of that with this cat at all. And that's what I think is really interesting. I think the flipping of the narrative between the left and the right in this circumstance has been pretty neat, because I feel like what I'm hearing from a lot of the left is the arguments that I would hear from the right if this in any other circumstance. So I feel like the left is going, well, you know what? This is just like a 1 in a million. It's got nothing to do with that. This is a fluke, and that's all the crap you always hear from the right constantly. Like if there's political violence that comes up or anytime a shooting happens,
you're not gonna hear the same narrative as the Oregon stabbing, because that was taken in a racial context because of what he was doing, whereas this guy went and shot up a Republican baseball practice. So you're not going to hear the same thing. They're gonna go with the liberal slant versus the white supremacist slant.
Yeah, which I think.
I'm not condoning either of them, but it's just a fact of the matter. That's why it's going to feel different. They're both despicable acts, but that's why they're gonna politicize them differently.
Yeah. The other angle of the politicization. Sorry, I'm slurring. I've been having too much water today. Is the mass shooting thing over and over again? I think we talked about this week 1 or week 2. The mass shootings. I was reading some article, it may have been the Post or the Times, but according to some watchdog group, it's like this is like the 117th mass shooting that we've had this year. I'm like, what the hell is a mass shooting? What does it mean? You can't say that the type of violence that this guy enacted, going in and while there was a particular motivation behind it, sort of arbitrarily and indiscriminately shooting at people, trying to kill them. You can't say a circumstance with that where this guy tried to kill a bunch of people in a public place is the exact same thing as a gang shooting or drug-related crime. It pisses me off so much, the fear-mongering that these people are fucking engaged in. Like, this is we've had over 100 mass shootings this year. You can't compare these two things.
Yeah, that well, I don't know if that's where she may have gotten it from, but Katrina Vanden Heuvel used that. Yeah, she used that as a big talking point on Left, Right, and Center this week.
I haven't listened to that in a couple of weeks. I really need to, though.
Yes, that was her standing point. Is there's been 107 mass shootings this year. Nobody really questioned her on it, but
yeah, I wish was Megan McArdle there, because I like her. I think she's smart. But
I don't know. I'd have to re-listen.
Yeah, I feel like Rich Lowry should. Anyway, it's off topic. But one of the other interesting things that come up that I think will come up as more information becomes known, there are a lot of questions about the procurement of this firearm. You know, when did this cat buy the gun? Did he legally acquire it in whatever state he was in, Virginia, Illinois, whatever is in between those two states? I don't have a map in front of me. I'm not a geographer. Where he got it. Did he get it at a gun show, licensed firearm dealer? Because I feel like that information might change the narrative that people are trying to weave one way or another. If this guy ended up buying the gun in Virginia and got it at a gun show, well, great. We go back to the narrative as normal. Here we have the NRA and the right as a whole defending the ability of people to have firearms, defending the Capitol Police, and then the left goes back to gun shows, it's gonna destroy America. But if it's the opposite, if this guy bought the gun in Illinois with according to it's like the Brady organization, or the folks that got involved with passing the Brady Handgun Act, has like the second best gun laws in the state, then clearly that's a huge mark against some of the stuff they're trying to push.
Let's talk about the gun show loophole. Like, what is your stance there? For me personally, like, I'm all for right to carry, but I think they should close the gun show loophole. Like, you should still have to go through a background check. There should still be laws. The state's laws should be applicable at these gun shows. I don't see any problem with that.
I don't know. I used to go to gun shows all the time. I mean, my dad was a gun collector. He was a firearm collector. He was a shooting instructor. I spent a lot of my youth at gun shows. And I think, I don't quite know, because there's an instinctive knee-jerk part of me that says, actually, most of the guns that are purchased for crime are purchased illegally. They aren't purchased at gun shows, and
right.
The people that go to gun shows are the type. Oh, hold on a second. Let me just, work through the contradictory things that I've got. The most people that buy gun shows aren't actually doing it. They're generally collectors. A lot of people are buying antiques. That's what we did. When we went to gun shows, it was a lot of antiques. But at the same time, I understand the logic and the brain part of my thinking, as opposed to the gut part of my thinking, says I can see it. But there's, again, kind of going back to the more speculative side of I get the stance on that it should. To me, I think it's perfectly logical and perfectly legitimate to say the gun show loophole can be potentially dangerous. That you've got people who could just go in and like, hey, give me, here's $500, thanks, I appreciate it, I got a shotgun now. I think that can be dangerous, but at the same time, part of me brings up the solution without a problem. If the guns that are being used in violence aren't being bought there at all, then the skeptical part of my brain says solution without a problem. If it's not a problem, then we don't need a solution. If it becomes a problem, then we can set up a solution. But I don't know. I'm very conflicted over it.
Well, what I'm getting at is the gun show loophole is brought up so often. Why not just
if you close it, it stops the issue, right?
Well, yeah, no, I don't know that. No, I won't say it stops the issue. It just stops it as a talking point.
Oh yeah, sorry, that's what I meant. If you close it, then you can't have people going. If it weren't for gun shows.
I mean, here's the thing. If you go to a licensed dealer to purchase a firearm, we're just going with the state of Virginia. You have to submit to a background check. So why make it? If it's this high a point of contention, then why not just reform the law to add gun shows into it where they have to have background checks? I mean, my understanding is a background check for purchasing a firearm is fairly quick. It's not something that you're waiting days for. So then there shouldn't be it really shouldn't be an issue, and it just be, I don't know. To me, it's just like
it pardon the pun, takes ammo away from the non-gun people.
Right.
I
agree with what
we should
you're
come back
saying.
to this, actually.
If somebody's gonna,
sorry, go ahead.
What I'm saying is, if somebody's gonna purchase a firearm for to commit a crime, I agree with what you're saying. They're gonna get it one way or another. Like these laws aren't gonna stop it. Case in point, these states that have high instances of gun violence that have some of the strictest laws in the country. So it's either way, it's not going to stop it. But if they keep on fighting these points of contention, I don't understand why we. What is the point in not having the background check? What is it saving? Is it saving money? Is it saving time? Is it just
saving my constitutional rights? You call me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, will it stop vendors from coming to these gun shows? I don't. Yeah. I don't really understand. I mean, I'm sure there's a reason. Whether it's good or not is there.
That's what I want to get at. I want to put a pin in this. I do want to come back to it because I've got a couple of friends that actually know Second Amendment law pretty well. They are avid gun collectors. And I actually want to dig into this a little bit, talk with them and do some research and find out more about that loophole, because it is a point that does get brought up a lot. I mean, Virginia Tech, that's the only one I can think of off the top of my head at the moment. But it's something that does get brought up a lot. I think we should come back to this because I'm interested, because I'm actually pretty ignorant of why that loophole exists and the arguments for and against. Well, I know the arguments against it because I hear them every time someone gets shot from the news.
All right. Well, we'll
time for me to be quiet for about the next 20 minutes while you tackle the next topic.
Oh, we're not. You're not gonna be quiet the whole time. But okay, we're gonna move into something that happened Wednesday morning in the UK, the Grenfall Tower fire. It was a 24-story building caught fire.
Yeah.
I think it was like 4:30 in the morning local time. Currently, I think there's 30 confirmed deaths, but it could be as high as between 58 and 70 people in this 120 flat building. So of what I've looked into, I mean, this was in, I don't know a lot about England or London, but this was in one of London's wealthiest boroughs. It was government housing, and as of right now, there's 400 missing persons cases or paper, like 400 people have been filed missing. The authorities say that there's they're multiple files for the same person, so they believe it's less. But even still, there's hundreds of people missing right now. But yeah. I mean, the biggest thing that's come out of this is just the fact that, I mean, there's just gross safety violations going on in this place. We're talking one staircase for the entire building, which, can you look it up? Is it 24 or 27 stories?
Fairly certain it's 24, but I'll double check right here while you keep talking.
They had, like I said, one staircase for the whole building, no sprinkler systems, a floor-by-floor fire alarm system, meaning that the fire alarm didn't go off on your floor till your floor caught on fire, which is great if you're on the first floor, but if you're on the 24th floor, you are fucked.
Everything's fine. Everything's fine up where I am. I'm not worried.
On top of that, in an effort to save £6,000, which, keep in mind, the Kensington and Chelsea Tenant Management Organization is one of the wealthiest management organizations in the world. To save £6,000, they put flammable siding panels on the side of this building last year, I believe, which they believe, they haven't said what caused the fire or what caused it to spread so fast. But most people believe it was this flammable, combustible siding that has caused fires in multiple other countries. Was the reason why it went up in flames so quickly. I mean, it was like 20 minutes. It went from a fire on the 3rd floor to engulfing the entire building in less than 20 minutes. I mean, that's insane. And
just for context, one, it is a 24-story building. You were correct about that. Just for context, back when I was a dispatcher, that's a impressively fast. So where I am during the summer, the fires get really bad, and not just during the summer, but predominantly trailers and homes catch fire in the winter because people are plugging in heaters or they haven't in a long time, causing electrical shortages. When a trailer fire occurs, basically you send the fire department to make sure that the fire doesn't spread, because that trailer can go in, 15 to 20 minutes, which is impressive because a trailer is a couple of hundred square feet and it goes like just that. I hope everyone heard the snap because it snapped. The fact that a 24-story building was engulfed in flames that quickly is impressive. Impressive insofar as, like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I mean, there were security experts that have called these panels combustible, highly combustible. I mean, there's just so much. So, like, the more you dig, the worse it gets. I mean, you have Theresa May's new chief of staff who sat in on the safety meetings about this place. The former chief fire officer and the secretary of a parliamentary group on fire safety both had files on this building for safety concerns as far back as 2013, and nothing was done. I mean, to me, the fact they had no sprinkler system. I mean, the panels were just put on, like I said, I believe last summer. So, but you go back to 2013, I mean, there's no sprinkler system. They don't have any kind of connected fire alarm. Like you and I, well, you didn't stay on campus, but I mean, you're in a dorm. The fire alarm goes off on one floor, it goes off on all floors. But these people were, I mean, you're on the 24th floor, you have no idea that there's a fire on the 5th floor. And there's only one staircase, so if it takes out the 5th floor staircase, you're trapped. Everybody from the 5th floor up is now trapped. And then on top of that, they basically put kindling on the side of the building. It's, I mean, the member of this maintenance group should be held on criminal charges. I just don't see any other way around it.
It seems almost like it is intentionally negligent, which I'm aware is an oxymoronic phrase, but Jesus.
We'll get into this too, but this, like I said, this is one of the wealthiest boroughs. I mean, this is where, I don't know, royalty.
They're just like the building next door has like literal royalty in it.
But I mean, it's one of those things they could care less because this is poor housing. It means nothing to them. Most of these people, like they set up a hotline for immigrants that have lost their passports and their visas in the fire to try to figure out what to do, because it's incredibly sad. And you have Theresa May, who's being chased away from scenes. I mean, she showed up the day, Thursday, I believe, and wouldn't meet with survivors because she was scared of hostility, and instead chose to meet privately with first responders. And then the next day came back and snuck in the back door of a church to meet with volunteers because she didn't want to see the public. She was chased away from that church, by the way. But
I get that she's behaving like an absolute moron. I mean,
she's also making Jeremy Corbyn look like a saint who is out in the streets.
But that's what pisses me off, is because he's doing the exact fucking opposite thing that she is, and she is unintentionally politicizing it by just fucking ignoring it, but he is purposely politicizing it and gaining points. And I understand that there's a degree of human emotion going into this. Like, he legitimately does care. I'm sure that he has a heart somewhere wrapped in an old Soviet Union flag in his chest. But I hate Theresa May. I think she's a moron. I hate Jeremy Corbyn too, but he's fucking pulling the trigger on this politicization hard.
He's in Parliament calling for them to rehouse those survivors affected. He's been on TV hugging survivors, talking to them about what happened. I mean, sure, he's politicizing it, but he's basically setting himself up to take over, and she is sitting by the wayside. She has released
a commoner.
She's released $5 million in relief from the relief fund. Each tenant can get £500 in cash right now, and Monday, starting tomorrow, or today actually, I guess, I think they're like 5 or 6 hours ahead. I don't remember, but they're sending out checks for an additional £5,000 to each tenant. I mean, you have plenty of stuff online. The community banding together and for donations. The Red Cross has raised almost £1 million. There's a lot of great stuff coming from it. But the stuff we're talking about right now with Theresa May, she's basically ensuring that the Labour Party is going to take the majority seats as soon as possible. Yeah, I mean, they're calling for a resignation right before this even happened, and now they're literally mobs chasing her cars through the streets. I mean, at the St. Clement's Church where she visited volunteers, I mean, the mob outside, she snuck out the back and tried to speed away, and the mob had to be forcibly stopped with a wall of police because they were chasing her down the side streets.
I mean, I totally get their anger with her. I mean, when you go through it, I think The Guardian referred to this as the UK's Katrina. a reasonable assessment.
Well, they also compared May to George Bush during Katrina.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I get the anger that these people should be expressing for her seeming lack of empathy for what's going on. And again, this is because I'm not English and I don't have a lot of heart connection with this. I mean, obviously, I have basic human empathy and shit like that, but being able to remove myself a touch from it, and I could just see this going headlong into Jeremy Corbyn's hands, which I don't think is going to be good for England remotely at all. I mean, and I don't want to sound like one of those like super annoying, the market can fix it libertarians, but I mean, this is government housing. You have government housing in one of the wealthiest nations on the face of the earth in an incredibly wealthy district, and it was still a piece of shit because it was government housing, and you guys wanted to save £6,000. That's not a lot of money that cost potentially 70 people their lives. I don't have a lot of confidence.
Well, that's what they're talking about
right now.
They're talking about this in general. They're speaking directly about the government's just complete lack of any concern in the matter. I mean, you had multiple tenants that were addressing concerns. I mean, you had the Grenfall Action Group that fought for years for this stuff and finally had to give up because they weren't listening to anything that they had to say on the matter. I mean, I read reports of 2 women that died in the fire, or believed to have died in the fire, that received cease and desist orders from the Kensington Chelsea Tenant Management Organization for trying to fight to try to get these improvements in the building. So instead, they would rather take these people to court than actually just fix the issues in the building. And I mean,
which is ironically probably cost them more money, but whatever.
Oh yeah, as far as I'm concerned, they're done. And you have like nobody's trusting them anymore, and the legal action is going to come. I mean, they have potentially 70 deaths on their hands. Yeah. I don't see how this doesn't fall back on them completely.
Yeah, on the county governor, the county council, and on the business itself.
I mean, I have the whole history of public housing and stuff in the UK.
Yeah, guess how far back it goes, everyone? 1890.
Well, they had...
Jeff
that's
did
when
a lot of research.
1890 is when they passed the Housing and Working Class Act that made government housing. And then Margaret Thatcher kind of pushed for a right to buy, which got tenants in these government houses to buy the mortgages from the government. And I mean, essentially, I think it was between 79 and 2013, 1.6 homes were purchased by their tenants. About a third of the government housing. There's only about 8% of England's residents that still live in it, but there's a lot that 8% are living in pretty shitty conditions. And like, if you want to rent, like, the rental spaces are incredibly, like, there's limited opportunities to live in rental units in England, and then the ones you do are pretty bad. And then the private homes that you can buy are so expensive that most can't afford it. So I mean, this isn't uncommon issues. You go into major cities in the U.S., try to get a house in San Francisco for rent that doesn't cost you 6 figures.
Yeah, DC is going through the same thing right now. I mean, a buddy of mine just bought a townhouse in Alexandria, and I mean, in dense cities like that, it costs $800,000 for a townhouse. I mean, housing in dense places like that could be ridiculous.
Oh yeah, I mean, what I'm talking about in San Francisco, you're talking about 5 figures
Jesus
a month
Christ.
for rent. I mean, but that's also the whole tech industry where they're making a lot of money. I'm not going to get into that, but I don't know. I think more and more is going to come out about this, and I think there's going to be... This is something that's going to go away. Like, I mean, like right now you have 30 people that have died. I mean, you see images of people jumping out of the building. It's just gross misconduct and just complete lack of care for safety. And I mean, this is one building. I highly doubt this is the only building in the city that is like this.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a lot of things that are going to come from this. But yeah, this pissed me off. And so did the next topic.
Righteous indignation. I love it.
Yeah, so we have we have the next topic. We're going to talk about the Texas House Bill 3859 that was signed into law by Governor Greg Abbott.
Today we learned the Establishment Clause doesn't mean a goddamn thing.
Basically, this law allows faith-based adoption agencies, under the protections of their sincerely held beliefs, to deny basically anyone they see fit, mostly homosexuals, members of another religion, interfaith couples, single parents, or couples that have one or two members that have ever been divorced, to adopt a child. Furthermore, it allows them to place LGBTQ children in
which has been made illegal in certain states. I don't think it should be made illegal. I think somebody should be able to go if they want, but it's fucking stupid and it doesn't work. Sorry.
Oh, but they're gonna force you. And the big thing I looked into is there's a lot of research out there that says there's a lot of kids that identify somewhere on the LGBTQ, I'm gonna say spectrum. Please don't condemn me for that. But because families will disown these children and they end up in the system, but they can send them to conversion therapy. Jewish or Muslim children can be forced into religious schools, Christian schools. They say religion, but we all know what religion it is in Texas. They can deny children contraception or other medical devices or needs based on their religious beliefs. I don't know. It's so much bullshit. The law requires them to refer people attempting to adopt that they don't agree with, that they won't work with. They have to refer them to an organization that will. But the law also allows them not to work with organizations that they don't agree with. So I can see some bullshit happening here very easily.
And part of me what is when you talk about other medical needs and things they disagree with. If there's an adoption agency run by a group of Christian scientists, and for those that don't know, Christian scientists believe that you shouldn't really engage in a lot of medical practices. That you pray, it helps you get over this stuff. Part of me wonders, like, if there's a legality with that. I mean, how far? Look, I even as an ardent atheist and general disliker of organized religion as a whole, I believe firmly in the importance of the freedom of religion. I think it is one of that next to the freedom of speech are probably like my two favorite things about the United States. It's kind of cool stuff. But there's a certain point at which human safety ends, or human safety begins, and your freedom of religion ends. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean that's what the biggest opponents are saying. They're putting religious beliefs over top of the needs of these children in the system. Whereas the people for the bill are saying this allows them to serve the children of Texas while also maintaining their faith.
I didn't even know that
you can't do anything. You can't do anything without putting your faith
definitely.
into it.
I had some Brussels sprouts earlier, so I had to pray about it first. But I didn't think that there were really private adoption agencies. I can understand, like, and maybe you can clarify this for me a little bit. I can understand the concept of like a private facilitator for adoption. Like, you've got company A, I've got company B. We're both like, hey, need help getting through the adoption process. You want us to pick and choose, people that seem to match up with you, the things that you want. Like, maybe, like an adoption headhunter.
There's necessarily.
But I think it's
I don't know if there's necessarily private adoption agencies, but there are definitely religious tax exempt religious groups that
like the NFL
adoption.
Yeah.
But and this doesn't just fall to adoption agencies. This law also will affect group homes, counseling services, care for abused children, and resources for children that have complicated family situations. So this is going to affect child services as a whole, not just adoption agencies.
Jesus Christ.
Also, I mean, and it seems like we're kind of condemning Texas, which we kind of are, because it's the second week in a row we've brought up a fucking bill they're passing through as law. But North Dakota, South Dakota, Michigan, Virginia, Mississippi all have laws already on the books.
Not if Ralph
to do these
Northam
things.
wins. He's going to make Virginia great. Again.
Oh, Jesus Christ. And then we have Oklahoma and Georgia, who are both have legislation on this pending. So, I mean, this is not something that's only happening.
Yeah, when I
in
hear
Texas.
stories like this, like when you shared it with me, I was really hoping it would turn out to be like drastically blown out of the water. You know, it's actually not at all like that. I was really hoping like it was some like shitty Facebook article from like Blue Next or Blue Now or whatever the hell that group is, but it's not. It's actually incredibly horrible, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, this is forcing your beliefs onto other people. You're taking, I mean, when they talked about taking kids and putting them in conversion therapy, basically telling them they're sinful and bad and they need to
We're gonna make you
and
like a set
fix
of genitals you
themselves,
don't like.
or taking children of another faith and putting them in Christian schools to try to convert them from their heritage. It's completely fucking ridiculous. And I have yet to read into the laws in these other states that already have it. But if that's what they're doing, like there's some severely fucked
My
up things
litmus
going on.
test for laws like this is Turkey. If Turkey passed the same law, would we in the United States go, wow, that's pretty fucked up? And I think if Turkey passed this law, we would go, wow, they're trying to, you can take Jewish and Christian children, because we all know what they mean when they say, religion in Turkey, they mean Islam. You can see the exact, if Turkey passing the law makes me uncomfortable and makes me not want to live in Turkey, I generally don't like the law in the United States. So the Turkey test is a good point of reference for people who aren't sure how they feel about laws or just kind of want a little back and forth with themselves. This did not pass the Turkey test.
I don't really have that. I don't really have that test. I can just kind of look at it and go, "What the fuck is going on here?" But yeah, I mean, and that's the thing too. This isn't even. I mean, this isn't a bill. This has been signed into law. I mean, of course, you still have Oklahoma and Georgia that it's pending. The legislation's pending, so it hasn't been signed yet. But I mean, and then I don't know. I just can't believe of all, these states. They're just so like Mississippi.
Yeah, Mississippi.
It's like the deep South. But then you have North Dakota, South Dakota, and Michigan.
Yeah, we're
Virginia,
purple.
which,
We're purple
Jesus
leaning
Christ.
kind of blue, depending on what Alexandria is doing this time of the year. But I don't know. What bugs me the most is the environment that I was raised in was one that firmly said, well, private enterprise can do what private enterprise wants. So my initial issues with bills like this, I try to look for one outside of outside of an argument that could be just defended as what private business does, what private business wants. So I'm looking for a different angle. And for me, the angle that sticks with me really hard is the medical one. As I'm an ardent, I am very much for reproductive rights of a woman under any circumstances necessary, specifically in circumstances of rape and incest. And for me, I just find it unconscionable that should an adoption agency have you have a girl that gets fucking raped or something, and you're like, oh no, we don't believe in that. You're having that baby. Like, the hell is wrong with you? And again, I'm going to the most extreme example possible, but it's where all of our brains go immediately.
Well, they're not a private enterprise either. They're a tax-exempt religious group. They're not a private enterprise. That I'm sorry. If they were a private enterprise, they'd be paying business taxes. There would be something going on here. They're not. They had to get legislation passed in order to work outside of the rules of everybody else. So, I don't this isn't. I
don't mean private enterprise, but sorry, I should have clarified more. In instances of private business or religion, they can do what they want. Anyway, what I was really getting at there was the medical beliefs angle of it is so ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, to me, yeah, that's part of the ridiculousness. That, I mean, conversion therapy, forcing people to convert to your religion, forcing children, these people. You're not giving them a choice. They didn't have a choice of where they went, and apparently under the law these children can choose to go somewhere else. They don't have to stay under the care of this agency, but I'm sure that'll happen. I'm sure that's going to be easy to get done.
I'm sure the stipend or whatever type of funding that they get from the government for doing these things, I'm sure that will not sway their decision at all.
Yeah, it's just disgusting. It's even more disgusting that this is already happening in other states and you hear nothing about it. I mean, Virginia right now has a liberal governor, and this is still happening. He has not said a word about it.
I guess it's one of those you just don't think about it until it comes up and you hear it in the news. And I don't know when we put laws like this. Also, I think, just to not play devil's advocate, but just to be just to moderate slightly, since they have laws that allow faith-based organizations to discriminate like this, I think it would be worthwhile to look into, specifically Virginia, because that's what affects us, because that's where we live, and we're the first state. We're also probably the coolest. To find out, what laws are actually on the books. If it just ends up being like, the faith-based organizations, they just make you go to mass on Sunday or something like that. That's kind of benign, although still kind of shitty. Or if it's actually like this Texas law that seems awful, which I look forward to being taken to the courts.
Well, these states are lumped in as similar laws, even if they don't have this stuff on conversion therapy and denying medical needs. They're still allowing them to discriminate against people, which in and of itself is wrong. But the fact that they are keeping children in the system instead of giving them a caring home because they disagree with the faith or the circumstance of the person that is otherwise qualified.
You can't go with that nice Jewish couple. They're Jewish.
It's just fucking ridiculous. It's so ridiculous and petty, and I don't know. If I had it my way, there would be no religious groups in charge of adoption. They can stay to their own if that's.
Yeah, I could understand the angle of sort of how in insurance, a lot of insurance was in its origins came through faith-based organizations pooling money for people, which I can get, and I respect. And if a religious institution wants to assist in the process, do things like that, I totally get it. But I feel like this is just such a manipulation of the tax-exempt status of a lot of the regulations that religious organizations are allowed to skirt, and the complete perversion of the First Amendment and the freedom of religion. Everything gets I thought the freedom of religion stuff kind of really died, that it would go away, but it hasn't. It's come back more and more. Everything is a violation of our freedom of religion, and it's just so ridiculous.
I should also probably state that not every religious group is going to do this. There are plenty of good religious groups that aren't looking to push their message down your throat, and are legitimately just trying to help people. I do know that. But
we're not all Christopher Hitchens over here.
Working myself up.
Mostly because I'm alive.
Let's move into the vote this week in Puerto Rico. That 97% of those
people
who voted, and I'm saying that on purpose, voted in favor of statehood. Unfortunately, only about 23% of the population, the voting population, actually voted. But regardless, they voted in favor of statehood. So now they will be sending 2 senators and 5 representatives to D.C. to request statehood, which will probably be rejected for the same reason it was rejected in 2012.
I think D.C. and Puerto Rico have a lot in common.
Trump
they're both basically colonies.
Right.
Well, D.C. has no say in Congress or anything. They're just kind of there.
Well, I mean, the thing is, they in 2012 they were denied because they said not enough people voted, and more people voted in 2012 than they did this time. So I'm just going to assume that's what's going to happen. And then you have, I put Guam in here because, that they denied Guam because they say they can't understand the Constitution. And that's a whole nother topic.
Is it because they don't speak the language? We may need an interpreter.
most of Guam's adult population are military veterans, but they can't understand the Constitution, so they can't be a state.
I'm totally down with them being states. I mean, they're colonies at this point. Like, we still have fucking colonies. Like, great. If it seems ridiculous that they aren't. I mean, we have plenty of military bases there. For me, I just don't. And again, something I've said before. For me, I just don't see a good argument against doing it. So I don't know what the big deal is. I mean, we'll have to redesign the flag, and I understand that's important, and that's going to cost a lot of money. But I think it's probably still worth it.
I mean, yeah. The thing is, if they bring Puerto Rico in, then Guam
maybe the
has
Philippines
to come in.
potentially.
Like, I'm sure that'll happen.
Oh wait, I'm sorry. I forgot that crazy man is currently there. So never mind.
Speaking of crazy, man, let's go into this week in Trump.
We got a long one. We got a long twit this week.
Trump. First up on the agenda is the play Caesar. Basically, the whole gambit of bullshit for this week. Donald Trump Jr. Coming out saying this is not art.
His quote is, "I wonder how much of this art," in quotes, "is funded by taxpayers. Serious question. When does art, quote, become political speech, and does that change things?" That is like, there are things that irk me. They put sand in my shoe, gonna be in my bonnet, and that is one of them. Because no, it doesn't change a fucking thing if it's political speech, because the First Amendment is still around that protects political speech. Now, do I think this is a little grandiose? Well, certainly, yeah. When they did it to Obama, it's still dumb. When they do it to Trump, it's also still dumb. It's this exaggeration of something, and I understand that, you know, there are people who legitimately feel this way. They're trying to make an artistic point, and I understand that. But first of all, it's not a good comparison. Caesar, definitely an elitist. Definitely went and fought a bunch of wars. Nothing remotely close to this type of populism. But also the fact that it is even coming up from someone that has an authoritative role in the federal government, that how much of this art is funded by taxpayers? Well, it's Shakespeare in the Park, and it's a fucking public thing. So probably all of it. I don't know. I hope I'm not wrong about that. But the fact that it is even remotely relevant, that does political speech change something? Well, fucking no.
First of all of Rome was elitist, and they were constantly fighting wars. But regardless, I mean, the message of Caesar is killing your leader will not lead to what you think it will. It's not going to end up well, and that's the message of the play. It's pretty clear. And it's also pretty clear that Trump Jr. has never seen it before, but that's fine. I mean, and there's already video out there. The first time, the opening night of the play, you had a woman jump on stage screaming about political violence. Some man in the audience jumped up as they dragged her off the stage, calling everyone Nazis as he shot his hand up in the air like a moron. I don't know. This just seems like something else for people to get mad about. Just outrage.
It does.
And they all look
it
like
does bring.
And they all look.
It does
really
bring up an interesting question, though. What the whole, like we talked about, Ted Nugent telling the fucking President Obama he can suck on his machine gun, which the image in and of itself makes my teeth hurt, because I don't know how many of you have ever touched the barrel of a rifle before. It's not pleasant. It's just the idea that makes my teeth like itch. But beyond that, it brings up a good question of, has political rhetoric gone too far? And now I will give the right a feather in their cap. I'll give them a touch of credit on this one. I think they have a point. Not because the political speech has gone too far, but of how tolerant we are of the political speech. When President Obama was, burned in effigy, they did things like that, it wasn't treated the same way. And I think the tolerance that the media has had, biased or unbiased, towards the deluge of anti-Trump activities plays protests, satirization, the fact that they characterize the man as a complete buffoon. And I will say I have called him an orangutan and a moron probably every episode of this podcast. But that's art. This is theater, really, so it's different. I think that we are, especially the media, is way more tolerant of over-the-top criticisms of Trump than they ever were of Barack Obama. So I will give the right credit on that. I feel like the deck is a touch stacked against them because people are willing to listen to way more insane shit about Trump.
Well, I don't believe that. I mean, go back to the stuff where they show what they were complaining about with Obama when he was around this time, and it was him asking for Grey Poupon on his sandwich. They were going after him about that. I mean, I don't necessarily think that's true. I think that we're just getting to the point where we're far enough removed. And, I mean, the man makes himself a target with just the ridiculous shit he does. They had to go looking for targets with Obama, and they found plenty and said plenty. I don't agree with that point. I think he opens himself up to it, and he gets what he deserves
I do
in
think
the situation. Whether or not they're tolerant with this is one thing, but there's plenty of conservative media outlets going.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree in that regard. But I mean, what I think about is, I mean, just before we got on, I was flipping through Twitter, and Jake Tapper is retweeting, an old Donald Trump tweet and making fun of him and stuff like that. And I guess what I feel, all this attitude of, well, he shouldn't have won anyway. He's probably on his way out the door. He's a moron. Let's just run with it and treat him like a moron. And I don't feel like, and I do understand that, like the biggest controversy in Obama's first 6 months in office was he asked for Grey Poupon mustard and he wore a tan suit once, which, oh dear God, post Labor Day. But I know it's before Labor Day or whatever. But yeah.
Anyways,
yeah. But
let's continue with the point.
I just feel like a lot of the media that did that was the hard right. It's the Fox, it's the National Review, it's all the ones that you don't take too particularly seriously. It's I don't want to say fringe because National Review does actually do some good stuff, but it was more of a very narrow scope of media. But I think with this, it's almost a national feeling of, well, we can just run with it. And I do think part of that is attributable to the fact that Trump is a touch of a buffoon. He sets himself up for this stuff, and he behaves like an idiot with an alarming degree of regularity. It's like there's a daily quota to meet. And I think that has brought people's attention to it a little bit more. So we'll concede that.
Okay, I mean, well, here's the thing. We elected a 70-year-old reality TV star to the highest office in our country, who, unlike any president before him, tweets on a regular basis about what he's watching on TV. I mean, the man last week tweeted at Fox and Friends because to argue with them about a point that one of their guests was making. I mean, I get what you're saying, but the comparison just isn't there, because what he's doing versus what any president has done before him in the public eye on a daily basis, it's hard to compare.
That is a good point.
We're dealing with anything. We're in uncharted territory, and on top of that, we have a White House staff that is eager to tell us every time he does something stupid.
This week on the presidency.
For instance, the story this week was he's regularly shouting at TVs in the White House because they're saying stuff he doesn't like.
Does that too sometimes.
I mean, yeah, old people shout at TVs when they hear something they don't like. You ever watched an old man watch sports? They're screaming at the refs. But the fact that the staff believes they need to go out and then tell the public. I mean, there's plenty of factors attributing to this, but we're in a social climate that is completely different. You go back to 2008, and I mean, Facebook was just starting to get its legs. Social media and the internet didn't have the same power that it did by the end of Obama's presidency.
I think you make a good point there. It's something that I hadn't particularly considered before. I think we are in largely uncharted territory with regards to how our president is behaving, but I think also with our willingness to be open with political criticism. I mean, I say uncharted territory. Yeah, we were really open with political criticism, yeah, in the 60s and a touch of the 70s with Watergate too. But it is an interesting point. We are in a touch of uncharted waters. So, I don't know. We aren't going to solve this one today. We got more points.
I mean, who knows the next? I don't think we're going to solve it in general.
You say that. I'm going to find a formula.
Who knows? Maybe the next president, whoever it is, we may be just as bad with.
Well, if it ends up being President Pence, I'm going to go ahead and say that he'll probably have somebody running his Twitter feed for him.
Does he tweet?
I think he's going to have to start eventually. I mean, the bar's been set pretty high. You get like 20 tweets a day from the current president. I mean,
I don't know. He did go a couple days without tweeting last week.
He lost his phone.
But anyway,
he had a jitter. His thoughts of people.
We have we
need to
more,
burn through
more
these
points to hit, so we got to get up. Let's see. So Trump, in a speech in Miami this week, rolled back Obama-era policies with Cuba. Basically, he's not going to lift the sanctions until all political prisoners are freed. These are all his points of contention. Freedoms of assembly and expression are respected, all political parties are legalized, and free and internationally supervised elections are scheduled. Now, he hit really hard on the human rights issues in this speech, even though multiple human rights and reform groups came out against it, saying that locking down these sanctions and, again, are going to do nothing to actually help with human rights issues on the island. He's sticking to his guns. It's
I know
it's ridiculous. And then on top of that, Cuba came out and basically told them to go fuck themselves. Yeah. that's the gist of it. I'm gonna go with that.
That's more or less it. We're doing something dumb with Cuba. We undid some dumb for a little while, and we're just redoing dumb all over again. I mean, when Grover Norquist isn't on your team and you're a Republican, you've done something wrong.
I mean, you have Rubio on it. He has Rubio on his
Cuban
side.
Experts.
So it's worth it, right? I mean, but yeah, you have the Americans for Tax Reform and Freedom Works basically coming out and saying, like, open business and engagement in Cuba is going to instill free market values and do what you want to happen there. But that's not how Trump operates. He just
not my style, dog.
And then we have Trump hinting at firing,
which he wouldn't
Mueller
be able
this
to
week.
do. Rosenstein would have to do it. Rosenstein, I think. Stein.
Yeah. So, which he said he wouldn't do unless there was good cause, whatever that means. I just can't. I'd have to imagine if he did that, it'd be the nail in the coffin. To then, especially when he's come out, we're going to talk about it in a second, but he's come out with the quotes that he's come out with this week. I don't know that you'd have to be very stupid to do something.
Yeah, I mean, what's good cause? Is it looking into Kushner's finances?
Oh, nice
I'm practicing.
Yes. So Jared Kushner's finances are being looked into.
Yeah. Next point. That's pretty quick.
So, yeah, that's all it is. I mean, we've already spoken on his finances before. He's got loans, crazy debt, overseas issues with China.
Yep.
Next point. Trump's travel ban loses in the appeals court. The Fourth Circuit Court in Richmond, Virginia, ruled that the travel ban violated the First Amendment's prohibition of government establishment of religion. Now, this is a little different than the Ninth Circuit Court, who they ruled that the ban exceeded Trump's authority that Congress had granted him in making national security adjustments in the realm of immigration. And I've seen little things about them bickering back and forth about the ruling, but they essentially came to the same conclusion, just in different ways.
I'm going to side with Richmond on this because, and again, I'll say this as someone who's not a federal circuit judge. Not mistaken, there was an Immigration Act passed under the Truman administration that said the president does have these sweeping powers, and that the establishment clause is going to go way farther. But it really depends on when this goes to the Supreme Court, as it inevitably will. will the Supreme Court look at tweets and things? Because, I mean, this was one of the first cases. I'm sorry, this was like the first case in United States history where federal judges are asking about the significance of tweets, which apparently they had never done, and there's a huge dispute on whether these tweets should be taken as part of as something that goes into consideration with the ruling. Can you take a tweet from a private Twitter account and go, well, yeah, he's trying to violate the Establishment Clause?
Well, I mean, that's what we have Mike Quigley coming out with. He's introducing the Covfefe Act, this is the same guy that made the Mar-a-Lago Act.
I don't know a single thing about this man's
Basically,
policies, but I love him already.
Well, I don't know anything either, other than the Mar-a-Lago Act was to make visitor logs at Trump's resorts and the White House open to the public, and the Covfefe Act, which is another acronym standing for the Communications Over Various Feeds Electronically for Engagement. There's still a stretch there, but it's fine. Would basically classify the presidential social media posts as record, which means they would have to be recorded, and then they would be considered statements from the
That's
president.
exciting. I think all that. I mean, aside from the fact that
according to the White House, they already are considered statements from the president. But this would just make it.
Aside from the fact that I do think these are legitimate things that are worth noting, I love a good pun acronym, and this guy knocks it out of the park.
Yeah, well, I don't know. This should already be in there. This is just one of those things. It's just an amendment that needs to be added, which is good considering that I feel like social media is gonna play a bigger part as we.
Yeah, have you seen Ralph Northam's Twitter?
Ralph
Northam's Twitter. Good God, like.
No, I try to stay away
Jesus
from
Christ. I mean, I think he's probably the most level-headed
Post
guy.
that.
I haven't seen a libertarian candidate, but I assume if he's a libertarian candidate in Virginia, he's going to be like every other one, unless it was Sarvis, because I actually really did like Sarvis. He's pretty level-headed. But, like, Jesus, like Ralph Northam. God damn it, Twitter. I hate you so much. Anyway, sorry.
No, I mean, this is the same guy that does these, like, sweeping generalities in his gun law commercials. But whatever.
Point number 7, yeah.
So Trump, Friday, we don't have to keep numbering them. I was hoping we just keep
halfway
moving
done.
through. In a tweet Friday morning, Trump said, and I quote, "I am being investigated for the firing of for firing the FBI director by the man who told me to fire the FBI director. Witch hunt." Yeah. So basically, he admitted to being
Which is
under
also dumb,
investigation.
because did Bob Mueller tell him to fire James Comey? Is this some, like...
Yeah, when did... Not sure when that happened. And then, so Trump's lawyer came out and said despite his tweet, the president is not under investigation. And he claimed that Trump was just responding to a Washington Post story, and that the tweet only appeared as if he was admitting to being under investigation because of the character limit. Because Trump doesn't do multiple tweets.
He doesn't use ellipses at the beginning
happen.
or end to signify the fact that he's carrying on a continuous thought that exceeds 140 characters.
Yes, yeah. And then this morning in another tweet, Trump came out and said that the Rasmussen poll, he called it one of the most accurate polls of the 2016 election, has him out at 50% approval rating, which is, he claims, is higher than, calls him O, speaking about Obama. He says he's higher than Obama's numbers, which just aren't true. Even if you go by Rasmussen's polls, Obama is at least, even at his lowest, which Trump is currently sitting at 40% approval rating. I don't know where he got to 50% from.
Well, you got to round
Obama's
up. You
lowest
just got to
approval
carry
rating
the
is
2,
still-
and then you get to 50.
I'm not sure that's how it works. But okay. Yeah, this is just, I mean, I have all the numbers, but it just doesn't matter. He's so far from the truth, it's not even funny.
Yeah.
He just picks and chooses. I mean, there's even more polls out there that have him below 40, like in the upper 30s.
This is going to be
It's so let's keep going. Trump's personal attorney Michael Cohen has hired his own attorney, Stephen Ryan, to represent him leading into his testimony set for September 5th in front of the House Intelligence Committee, which so Trump's attorney has hired an attorney.
I missed Pimp My Ride. We're gonna get your attorney an attorney.
I asked you before. I'm just gonna ask you again. Doesn't he have some kind of privilege, like, with his client, to where what is the point of him testifying when he can he just bring that privilege up?
I would assume, because in the same way that you have doctor-patient confidentiality, you have attorney-client privilege that prevents you from revealing particular sets of information. So I would imagine that he could just do the exact same thing Jim Comey did and the exact same thing Jeff Sessions did and be like, can't really talk about it. And that's it. I mean, the amount of people that have been testifying before Congress, like they had the first ones, like Jim Comey's first one was like, oh, so neat. And then Sally Yates was like, oh, Sally Yates. And then Jim Comey part 2 was super exciting. And then it was a big letdown. And then Jeff Sessions. And now it's just like, the dude that held the cab door for Trump one time is going to be up next week.
So Pence also hired an attorney. Is he set to testify? Is he going to?
I haven't heard. I would assume
or is
not.
He just
simply because
he's just preemptively hiring someone to represent him in case
CYA,
shit hits the fan.
CYA, you never know.
I always just find it interesting. I also find it interesting that our president can't be tried for anything until he's been impeached, right? So I don't understand why he has an attorney. He has an entire legal team working for him right now.
Better to be safe than in prison.
Like I don't know. Anyways, so the White House is trying to convince Congress, who just passed a more like stricter sanctions against Russia for their role in tampering with elections. The White House is trying to get them to relax these sanctions a bit, if not at least make it, according to, I believe it was Tillerson, make it more flexible for the president to adjust these sanctions as he sees
they must have
fit.
watched that really compelling Oliver Stone interview and just realized that they were a little too harsh on Putin.
They're just being, well, Putin said it's going to damage
Which is the fucking point. It's not a pat on the back. It's saying
Right.
you're doing something wrong.
I mean, it's a punishment. It's a punishment for tampering with the elections and annexing Crimea. It's
Remember that time you took over a country?
The biggest thing is, like, the
after
White
you
House
took over a different country.
I mean, we have cabinet members coming out and saying, president shouldn't have to answer to Congress on this. He should just be able to change the sanctions as he sees fit. I'm sure that'll work out great. Just let him start doing that. Anybody that shows him a good time automatically gets all their sanctions removed.
You're gonna have like Iranian officials coming over with like golden fountains and platinum bidets, just decking the White House out. In an unrelated set of events, the president has also decided to drop the Iranian sanctions.
So, the last point for this week is apparently Donald Trump has finally read the Republican healthcare bill. And he has come out of it on the other side, saying that it is mean, cold-hearted, and a son of a
we don't know
bitch.
if he means that as a compliment or not. In fairness,
I think he may be condemning this a little bit, considering he told in a private lunch that immediately leaked, because of course it did, that it's mean and it doesn't do enough to cover people. Keep in mind, I mean, this bill is being rewritten in the Senate as we speak to try to get the 50 votes to pass, which Mitch McConnell has already conceded that they don't have the 50 votes, which is pretty damning, considering Mitch McConnell can essentially find 50 votes anywhere if he needs them, but can't do it now. I don't know. This just goes back to, like, the president might as well just tweet every conversation, because whatever he says or does in the privacy of the White House or in the privacy of a meeting is immediately
for me, I feel like this is the epitome of the shoe being on the other foot with warrantless wiretapping. It just happens to be, fucking Ben Sass live tweeting your lunch. That's what it is.
Yeah. I just
They're
love.
sassy.
I just love. He's just like, like this man. This is the same man that had a party to celebrate the passing of this bill, and now he's going. This is really mean. Like, really? So you're just gonna openly admit that you knew nothing about the bill? That you were pressuring everyone to vote for, you knew nothing.
Look, I need a legislative victory and a Cliff Notes version of this. Can someone just draft that up for me real quick?
I think you're
Fuck it, like seriously, my
my
wife is telling me that I've been on the podcast for too long, and like I know it happens. Like normally she's like, "Oh, just gonna sneak into get some in the bedroom real quick," and it's delicate. And she's when she's like, "All right, look, we got stuff to do," it's just like, wham, doors opening.
Yeah, this is the shortest podcast in quite some time. But anyway, it's over now. So subscribe to us on iTunes, SoundCloud, anywhere else that you get your podcast from. Go to armchairconstituents.com.
Read blog posts or post right now.
Yeah, read the blog post. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, all those good things.
Yeah, next week, by the time we get
Discord.
off, Megan Kelly should be interviewing Alex Jones, so I think we should dig into that next week because I don't like either of them, and I think it'll be fantastic.
I guess we can do that.
Sweet.
We'll consider.
Someone hold us to
Anyway,
that. Join
we
our
will talk
Discord
to
or
you
something. Shoot us an email. Perhaps tweet at us.
Yeah, the Discord link will be in the information as it is every week. But we will talk to y'all later.
Bye.